Yo, what's going on, Clutch Crew Sports fans? Welcome back to another episode here. This is Eric, your ranting co host, coming at you with another 2022 NFL season preview. Today's episode is going to be featuring the San Francisco 49ers. I have a few friends on Twitter that I met that are 49ers fans, and I know they're excited for this. They've been waiting for it. Appreciate your patience, guys. There is a reason why I'd been waiting to do this one. I will get to that in a second. And I guess first of all, also let me say if my lighting is kind of weird, I do apologize. It's been kind of a mix of clouds and sun today, so uh, my background has been a little interesting. It's been hard to get the lighting exactly right, but hopefully that's not too big of a distraction. Um, but anyway, with that being said, let's get into it here. I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to be a very interesting team this season. We've talked about them in our top 10 most interesting teams episode. If you haven't watched, definitely give that a look. They just got a lot going on with this team, and I'm going to go ahead and get right into this here. Normally, I do key transactions like key additions and departures and stuff like that, but the 49ers offseason in terms of acquisitions was fairly quiet, so I felt like I didn't need to talk about that so much. But they do have a ton of different storylines going on, so I figured that would be my focus instead of acquisitions and things like that. I figured I would just strictly talk the storylines, and then, of course, I'll do the schedule at the end and give my official 2022 season prediction for them. Starting with the quarterback position, obviously, the 49ers had a lot going on here. They announced that Trey Lance is going to be the starter. They are essentially moving on from Jimmy G, but the thing is that they didn't find a trade partner for him. As of the time of me recording this, he's still officially on the roster, and the whole thing with Jimmy G was the reason why I waited so late to do this episode versus some of the other teams. I really wanted to see what was going to happen with him before I made this, but we're getting pretty close to the season starting, and as of right now, like I said, nothing has happened. So, but that's definitely an interesting situation there to see what's going to happen with him. Will they find a trade partner eventually? Do they just outright cut him? I know they're paying him a good amount of money. He would be an expensive backup, but do you just keep him around in case if Trey Lance gets hurt? What's going to happen with Jimmy G? That's definitely something I'm very curious about. And then, moving on to Trey Lance now, who's going to be their starter this year. Is he the guy? Obviously, he's a very hyped prospect. He's got a lot of, good features about him, but, he also has the issue of, that he did play college ball at North Dakota State and, didn't play the COVID year. And then, of course, he only played had a handful of appearances during his rookie season last year. So is he the guy? He's looked good in preseason. I try not to go off of that too much. You try not to look into preseason too much, especially when a lot of times they're going against backups or even if they're going against starters, they may not be giving 100% effort. So with preseason, it's too hard to tell really. But I am optimistic on Trey Lance. I don't know if he's going to be like an elite quarterback or anything like that. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I am optimistic on him. He's got to work on. He's obviously got a lot of things to work on in the passing game, but he does have that mobility factor, which can give you an edge. He has that ability to escape the pocket if need be, if he doesn't have anything open, and that's just always a nice advantage to be able to have. But then, of course, you are also putting yourself more in danger of injury if you rely on that too much. But Trey Lance is, the key storyline for the 49ers this year, and the 49ers they're a similar team to a few of the other teams that I've covered, mainly the Eagles and the Dolphins, where I feel like both of those teams and the 49ers have a lot of great pieces on the teams. Like they have great weapons, they have good defenses, but do they have the right guy at quarterback? And that's the main thing. That's going to be the thing with all three of those teams. What could potentially lead to them making deep playoff runs, but what could also potentially have them miss the playoffs entirely. I know Zach talked about this when we broke down the 49ers as one of our top 10 most interesting teams. This is a team that is contending for a Super Bowl. I mean, they almost made the Super Bowl last year. So it's rare to see a team that's got Super Bowl aspirations, making changes at quarterback like this. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how Trey Lance does and what kind of game plan the 49ers come up with him to, make the most of his talents. And then also on the offensive side of the ball, is Deebo Samuel going to have a lesser role this season? Part of there was the whole thing in the offseason, where Deebo wanted to be traded, and of course he wanted to get paid. He had a lot going on, and he did end up working out a deal with the 49ers for a contract extension, so he will be staying with the 49ers. He's not going to be traded. But he's also made it known that he doesn't really like doing the running back type of role with, taking snaps out of the backfield and doing the jet sweeps and stuff like that. I think he strictly wants to be a wide receiver. So another thing I'm curious about with the 49ers, like, are they still going to use him in the backfield or maybe less? If I'm San Francisco, I'm not completely cutting him out of the backfield. I mean, he's so lethal back there. Like, you also don't want to just completely wear him down either, and you want him to be out there as a wide receiver threat, but I'm still giving him a few touches a game, like, out of the backfield. Maybe not as much as they were, but if I'm San Francisco, unless they have some kind of extensive clause in his contract somehow to where he's not going to do that, then that's what I'm doing if I'm San Francisco. I'm still using his talents as much as possible. And then finally, like, the one key acquisition that the 49ers did make was bringing in the corner from Kansas City, Charvarius Ward. And so I just kind of want to briefly touch on how big of an impact will he have this season. He actually had a very underrated 2021 season, just looking at his performances and some of the, statistical things that he put up. I mean, he had a pretty solid year last year, and one of the few weaknesses that the 49ers do have is in the secondary. So I really like this move for the 49ers. This was definitely a bit of an under-the-radar signing when this happened. I don't think too many people were talking about it, but I like this move for the San Francisco 49ers. And then just taking a quick look at their schedule here now. Obviously they're in a tough division, with the NFC West. I mean, Seattle's definitely in more of a rebuild, but, the Cardinals could still be a threat. And obviously the Rams won the Super Bowl. That's going to be a challenge. And they're also playing the AFC West, which is also a very loaded division. So, the 49ers are going to have a tough time in that regard. But I think they're a good enough team to win a good chunk of these NFC West games, maybe split the AFC West games. I think they should beat Seattle both times. So I think they should do fairly well in that regard. And then they've got some, other rebuilding teams. They've also got the NFC South, so they've got the Panthers and Falcons in there. The Saints and Bucks, I think, will be pretty difficult, but and then they get the Bears week 1. So with the Bears week 1 and Seattle week 2, I think they've got a good chance to go 2-0, get off to a good start. And they also get Carolina and Atlanta fairly early on in the season as well. So I like the 49ers' chances here. Now, definitely the second half of their schedule is a lot tougher. I don't like the second half of the schedule as much. They're definitely, I guess, really, if I were going to say, like, what a key game for them would going to be, I'm going to say around here, like at week 7 and week 8 between the Chiefs and the Rams. I think they have a pretty good chance to, after their first 6 games, be 4-2, maybe even 5-1. But week 7 is where their season starts to get really difficult. They have that bye week in week 9 there. So I really think between the Chiefs and the Rams, they need to win at least one of those games. Then hopefully then get into the bye week at 6-2 if everything else goes well. and that sets them up nicely. Going into the second half of the season, where there's not as much pressure on them to win every single game. It's not like they would then have to win all these, but if they were to, between the Broncos and Rams in Week 4, if they were to lose one of those and then let one or two of these other games slip by in the early season that they should win, and then if they were to also lose to both the Chiefs and the Rams, and say then go to the bye week instead of it like 7-1 or 6-2, or something like that, if they're instead like 4-4, like that puts them a lot of pressure on them going into the second half of the season. So, but I think they're going to get it done. They are looking at their over under. Vegas, I've been noticing a trend here, like with our videos, that for the most part, Vegas has been pretty spot on with most of these teams. Their 2021 over under odds were at 10.5 games, and they won 10 games. So Vegas was right on the money with that one. They've lowered their over under odds this year by a game compared to last year. I think part of that's with Trey Lance starting. They might not have as much confidence in him, and they do also have a really tough schedule this year. So those are probably reasons for them lowering it. But I think they're going to get over this. I think they're going to win 10 games, maybe 11 games. I think they'll get a playoff spot pretty comfortably. I don't know how deep of a playoff run they'll go. It's going to depend on, Trey Lance, like I talked about earlier. If he's the guy, if he really is the guy, then this is a team that could get back into the Super Bowl. But if he's not the guy, or if he's not ready yet, they could miss the playoffs, and I could be wrong with my over prediction. But I think the 49ers have a strong enough run game. I think they've got enough weapons around him to help him. Their O-line is pretty good. Their defense is really good. I think they have enough to get the job done. I could see this, I'm a Jaguars fan. I could see this being kind of like a 2017 type of season the Jags had, where, they had a, great running game, great, amazing defense, and they got to the AFC Championship game, even though Blake Bortles was the quarterback. Like, even if Trey Lance struggles, like, I could see this being that type of a season for the 49ers. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. I always love to hear your takes. So just let me know. We're getting pretty close to being done. I think there's only 3 or 4 more teams left after this one. We're getting close to the end, so we should have covered your team by now. If you're listening to this and you're not a 49ers fan, you can go in our archives and check it out, and if not, we're going to be getting to your team pretty soon. So, all right, guys. Plus, we got podcast episodes, all kinds of good stuff coming out. So, thanks for tuning in, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. With that being said, peace.